Good morning, and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hachem, editor of Michigan.com, a digital business magazine serving the Arab American communities in Michigan. We provide business and real estate news, loan and lending information, support to small businesses, and much more. Visit us at Michigan.com. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful fall day, and we hope that you're having a great start to your day. On behalf of US Arab Radio, we wish you the best of time, peace, and happiness. We thank our sponsors, listeners, and supporters. This is a sad week, another sad week in the Middle East. The war has been going on for 10 days now between Israel and the occupied territories in Gaza with Hamas, and with casualties mounting on both sides, especially on the Palestinian side as well. On October 7th, Hamas launched a surprise attack against Israel, killing 1,400 people and injuring 39 others. I'm sure these numbers have, since I looked at them, they may have fluctuated, so forgive me if I'm not giving the exact number. But these are horrible numbers on every side. Israel has responded with an air attack on Gaza, killing more than 2,800 people and injuring about 11,000. Israel continued to bomb Gaza, and Hamas continues to launch missiles at Israel. I think a good portion of Israel is under attack, and almost entire Gaza is under attack as well. Israel is threatening with an invasion as conditions in Gaza deteriorates. It's with us this morning is Dr. Brad Roth, a professor of political science and law at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. Dr. Roth, good morning, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking the time. Where do we go from here? We have a horrible war that could ignite the entire Middle East. Where do we go from here?
Well, it's hard to say. The Biden administration is sending some mixed messages about all of this. There seems to be, on the one hand, very much concern about the optics of this siege and the impending invasion of the Gaza Strip. This certainly is a problem from the standpoint of U.S. foreign policy, and so one can see the administration scrambling to some extent here. But from the standpoint of its domestic incentives, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Israelis at this moment appears to be their political imperative. And I have not seen much sign that the administration will do much to restrain the anticipated attack that's to take place in Gaza. And of course, Gaza is already very substantially under attack.
Yeah. Are you surprised, like I am, that nobody is talking about a ceasefire?
Yeah, well, the people who are talking about a ceasefire are, of course, many of us in the international law community and many peace activist groups. But to speak of a ceasefire before Hamas agents have been apprehended, and before there has been a release of hostages, and before there has been some kind of serious destruction of Hamas's military capacities, is seen by many people as a fundamental betrayal of the dignity of the victims of Hamas in the recent attack. And so people are kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. They've in some ways been deprived of moral capital by the gruesome nature of the Hamas attack. And yet at the same time, that causes them to stand by while we are watching unfolding perhaps already an even greater humanitarian catastrophe than existed in the first place.
It's really amazing because, as a political science student myself, both undergraduate and graduate as well, normally you call for a ceasefire so you can negotiate these issues, because it doesn't seem, these issues are really going to be solved on the battlefield.
Well, unfortunately, both sides regard the other as an existential threat. And therefore, in the face of existential threats, you don't withhold from the use of military force. This is seen by many people on the Israeli side as something akin to the kind of struggle that took place during World War II, Hamas's attack is the greatest catastrophe to have befallen the Jewish people since the Holocaust. That looms very large in people's minds, and it looms large in the minds of people who know that their forebears stood idly by while the Nazis did this to Jewish people. And that, of course, perversely leads them to stand idly by while another great humanitarian catastrophe is in the offing.
I see your argument, and someone could really argue that during that time, Jews were not occupying land and were not engaged in a confrontation with the Palestinians. And I mean, Gaza is an open air prison. As the conditions like this have been going on for 17 years, people have no prospect, no jobs. 45, 45, I think 45% to 60% of the population are very young. They have been under a blockade. They have been, and don't you think conditions, and then this is not to minimize the horrible attack on that people in Israel suffered, but don't you think that's a little bit different condition?
Oh, absolutely, it's different. But the problem is reconciling two very different ways of contextualizing the same information. And it is, of course, the case that this did not come out of nowhere, that this is a product of a long-term set of conditions imposed upon the people in the Gaza Strip. There are different ways of understanding responsibility for that as well. And people are deeply embedded in the mindsets of their own communities in respect of all of this.
Absolutely.
So the difficulty is, on the one hand, one wants to condemn acts which are heedless of the dignity of human life on any side, and one side's misdeeds does nothing at all to mitigate moral responsibility for the infliction of new disasters against human dignity on the other side. But at the same time, one has to have some sense of people's ways of contextualizing this information. People who, on the one hand, sort of refuse to condemn actions are being accused on both sides as being some kind of moral relativist. And yet it turns out that this sort of different contextualization is endemic to the human condition. People forget, for example, that the United States incinerated hundreds of thousands of innocent Japanese in the latter stages of World War II, after the Japanese Empire had been shorn of all of its offensive capacities. We haven't had any real introspection about the firebombing of Tokyo, for example. And so one needs to have a certain amount of indulgence of how it is that people see these things in ways which I would say are objectively skewed, as you suggest.
Absolutely. I mean, when I listen to people saying that the objective is to destroy Hamas, and as you well know, Hamas is doesn't have offices and bunkers and whatever it is. They don't have it's not a military. I mean, they're, who knows where they are and among the population, and how can you tell this is Hamas and this is not? And to do that basically is to really, Israel tried before several times, and last time I think 51 days they were in Gaza, and it really did not, because the issue persisted, which is the suffering of the people. And this is where the idea of fighting on behalf of the people came about, whether we agree with it or not.
Right. Well, the way people rationalize this, of course, is to say that it's Hamas's fault for using the Palestinian civilians essentially as human shields. The difficulty with that is that there's some inconsistency in claiming on the one hand that Hamas is a criminal organization, and claiming on the other hand that Hamas is somehow a participant in an ethical division of labor. And that somehow it's Hamas's responsibility and not the Israelis' responsibility what happens to innocent civilians at the hands of Israeli military force, which is, of course, overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I don't know. I've never really understood that somebody could say, it is your fault because you're hiding. I mean, this is what guerrilla fighting is. Guerrilla fighting, they're part of the population. And if you're going to get to them, you're going to get to the population, period. And to destroy Hamas, that means destroy the entire Gaza, along with its inhabitants.
There is an international legal standard specifically on this point, which is a prohibition on an attack which may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, damage to civilian objects, or a combination thereof, which would be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated. That's language from the first additional protocol to the Geneva Conventions. It's a treaty which the United States is not a party to and Israel is not a party to, but this rule is generally accepted as part of customary international law. And it seems that there's no way that even what's gone on so far, let alone the attack that's to come, can be reconciled with that standard. And yet you have, for example, U.S. Ambassador Deborah Lipstadt, who was supposed to represent the United States on anti-Semitism issues, saying that no one gets to judge how the Israelis choose to defend themselves or to deter future attacks. That's basically to give people an open-ended license to violate international humanitarian law in the pursuit of what they understand unilaterally to be their national security.
Yeah, I visited some areas where some of the suffering is going on, and then I get to the conclusion is that people dealing with occupation, dealing with a brutal life, don't have the luxury to sit down and analyze what's this and what's that, as we sit here behind our desks in the West and trying to analyze these things. How much do you think if that is really contributing to this insanity there?
Well, of course, when you have been immediately victimized, you don't think about these things in those kinds of sterile terms on either side, and this is part of the problem. We need to have some external standard rather than deferring to the emotion-laden and situational ethic of people engaged in the heat of combat in the moment. That's been the effort of international law. That's been the effort to try to impose some kind of rule of restraint on the exercise of armed conflict through international treaties and ultimately through international criminal justice. But this is a very difficult problem, considering the fact that when you dub people as criminals, that itself has the effect of licensing whatever means seems necessary to bring to justice or bring justice to the people who have engaged in criminal acts. So unfortunately, I think people who are speaking on behalf of international law in some sense can make the problem worse by refusing to understand the contexts in which people operate and refusing to recognize that by fanning the flames of absolutism in all of this, that one is actually encouraging greater violence and greater war crimes.
Yeah. Speaking of international law, where does the cutting of food, water, electricity, and fuel of a population like this, where does that fit according to international law? I mean, can Israel do that? I mean, Israel's been doing that, but I mean, what does that stand?
It is clearly in violation, and it has been denounced by the International Committee of the Red Cross, which rarely makes public statements, but has made public statements about this. And also just the enormity of demanding that 1.1 million people evacuate their homes, which makes very little sense when you consider the fact that the targets of the attack are going to be evacuating along with them. And the purpose of the armed operation is to attack those particular targets, to degrade their capacities rather than to seize territory. So it's very difficult to understand what can be accomplished through this, unless what people have in mind is some sort of massive ethnic cleansing of a sort that the world has clearly articulated as being a crime against humanity. So this seems as though the design of the plot here is itself deeply problematic from the standpoint of international law and international morality.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned.
Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most, and make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493. Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood, 734-744-9796.
Welcome back, and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hachem. We're talking to Dr. Roth from Wayne State University. Dr. Roth, in regard to not allowing humanitarian aids, and there's a lot of discussion today between the United States and Israel and State of Israel and Egypt, and trying to facilitate that, but not allowing humanitarian aid. How much does that really complicate the situation there?
Well, of course, on the ground, it's really quite atrocious, and people who lack adequate water, whose water supplies are being contaminated by the failure of electricity in sewage plants and so forth. And the administration clearly is sensitive to the optics of all of this. And so is trying to work to seem to mitigate this in some way, but there's simply a contradiction between the Israeli military objective here and any serious form of mitigation. And of course, the cutoff of food, water, and electricity was directly stated by the Israeli government to be a kind of demand, essentially taking hostage themselves the entire humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip in return for the demand that hostages be released. It really is filled with kind of moral confusion and contradiction, and represents a humanitarian catastrophe already underway, but even greater in the making.
Absolutely. To talk about it from a political point, like a political science point of view, did it seem that Mr. Netanyahu, the prime minister, was he distracted with other politics and not seeing? I mean, to me, with all of the surveillance that Israel does, and not to know this and not to know about it, and not to be surprised by it, has he been distracted? Do you think with making peace with Saudi Arabia, and then going after Iran as much as possible, and then all the turmoil that inside Israel that was taking place?
Well, there will, of course, be inquiries into all of this. In the long term, this is not going to go well for the Israeli prime minister, just in terms of efficacy. But in the meantime, he is going to be bolstered, of course, simply by the rallying around the flag. And you've seen opposition figures come into the government to support him.
Absolutely.
So this is the kind of short run political win, maybe not a long run one. But I think what a lot of people are pointing to is that Israeli military units have been deployed in the West Bank in support of more aggressive activities by settlers in the West Bank, and that diminished the military preparedness of the Israeli armed forces in the south. There's also, of course, the ways in which the international moves have created conditions propitious for this kind of attack, because insofar as the Israelis and the Americans are maneuvering to create this united front with Saudi Arabia, leading to essentially another sellout of the Palestinian people by a major Arab power. The natural reaction on the part of Palestinian militancy to this is to demonstrate that it cannot be ignored. And there's also, of course, the Iranians who are supplying Hamas and who also have an interest in spoiling this united front that's directed against themselves. So it is a perfect storm of circumstances that gave rise to all of this. But exactly how the intelligence failed so completely is a mystery, and one that will eventually be solved by inquiry in Israel.
Do you think? I mean, anything could happen in the Middle East, but do you think would this spread to other part of the Middle East?
Well, of course, the biggest danger is that there'll be a war on the northern border of Israel with Hezbollah. And of course, depending upon what happens in the Gaza Strip, it might be seen by the Hezbollah forces in southern Lebanon as an appropriate response to let loose the missiles that they have, which are more sophisticated than the missiles possessed by Hamas, and to try to engage the Israelis in a war on a second front. That in turn, of course, would inflame relations with Iran, and one could see any number of further steps that could worsen the international situation. But I would say the major threat at the moment is a second front war in southern Lebanon and the northern Israeli border.
There has been a lot of propaganda on both sides, and a lot of stories have been told that's not really true. How much does that really contribute to the confusion?
Well, things are bad enough without fanning the flames with unsubstantiated stories. We've seen stories about babies being decapitated and so forth. We've seen this in the past, like the old incubator story from the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. There's always people who are looking to capitalize on these situations to try to heighten people's emotions. But frankly, the facts as they are so bad that people on both sides are in a heightened state of emotional turmoil over all of this, which causes them to be willing to rationalize levels of violence that in the abstract they would all repudiate.
Do you think there's going to be an invasion, a ground invasion?
It appears so. It's difficult to see what would prevail upon the Israelis to not do this. But it's unclear how far it would go. So if the northern part of the Gaza Strip is seized, but Hamas has essentially evacuated it, that wouldn't solve the Israeli problem. So presumably they would start to attack the southern part of the Gaza Strip, which would mean that this whole exercise of driving out 1.1 million people would have been completely valueless in the first place. This is very difficult to understand where this goes, but I do think that there is some prospect that the optics of it will be so bad from the standpoint of the U.S. administration that pressure will be brought to bear on the Israeli government to halt it at some point. But after how many thousands more deaths, is the crucial question, and one can only expect the worst, frankly, at this moment.
After all said and done, and what do you think is going to happen? I mean, what is the ultimate goal here? And because the American administration does not seem to know, okay, let's say Israel occupies entire Gaza, and then what? I mean, you still haven't solved the issue. The issue is the Palestinian issue. If Hamas is gone, somebody else is going to come along. Hamas was like yesterday came. Somebody else before Hamas was attacking the Israelis. So then what?
Well, the problem is that people on all sides have abandoned long-term thinking for a very long time. And in fact, this is endemic. I remember 40 years ago, I was an undergraduate student in the summer of 1983 at Hebrew University, and in those days you could travel through the territories, and including the Gaza Strip, very easily. In seeing what was going on the ground then, I was shocked that the Israeli political discourse seemed essentially oblivious to the long-term question. Only the people on the very far right who wanted to engage in ethnic cleansing, and people on the very far left who wanted to engage in negotiated settlement were actually coming to grips with the fundamental contradictions of the situation. Everyone else was just kicking the can down the road. And what we've seen is kind of an intensification of kicking the can down the road. So nobody really has a long-term plan, not Hamas, not the Palestinian Authority, not the United States government, and not any part of the Israeli political spectrum, except for, again, people on the very far left and the very far right, who are really marginal to the fundamental decision-making. So things are going to be a continued matter of muddling through for short-term political survival of all of the actors without any particular regard to how this could ever be resolved.
Do you think what happened now has put back the Palestinian issue on the front burner? At least for now?
Well, it has in a sense, but to what end? It doesn't necessarily put the idea of peace and reconciliation on the front burner. Indeed, it makes that harder to achieve, particularly because the only long-term solution is going to be some system of mutual self-determination in the same territorial space. We're long past the point where a two-state solution seems to make any sense. What we need to look at is the achievement of the self-determination of the Palestinian people in conjunction with the continued self-determination of Jewish people in Palestine. That is going to require a way of living peacefully together and coordinating and cooperating in ways that, of course, are as far from view at this moment as they've ever been. And so it's very difficult to figure out how this could be navigated.
Yeah, when I think about it sometimes, and the Israeli plan has been in the past several years is to make peace with other countries and ignore or isolate the Palestinians. And do you think that maybe pushed Palestinians to the point where, how about us, and cannot blow up?
Well, that's certainly one of the aspects of all of it, but also there's simply the continuing encroachment, and of course made worse by the rightward drift of Israeli governments. I don't want to sanitize what was done by governments prior to this one, but the interesting thing about this one is the prominence within it of what had been marginal figures, people who really were understood to be fascists and beyond the pale in the Israeli political spectrum. They were people who said out loud the things that other people were not willing to say.
Exactly.
And those are the people like Itamar Ben-Gvir, who was the Minister of State Security, or Bezalel Smotrich, who is the Minister of Finance Plus, extending his jurisdiction of the finance ministry into the occupied territories. These are people on whom Netanyahu has had to depend for his own not only political survival but his legal survival. This is an alliance built on corruption to keep himself out of prison. And so he's given away the store to these people who are quite overt in their disposition to engage in ethnic cleansing and to do whatever it takes to establish their conception of Greater Israel. So it's not a surprise that people will have given up hope at this point on a peaceful solution.
Yeah, this is the recipe for disaster. You get all of these people on the Israeli side who you just mentioned and what their ideas are, and then you got people on the other side in Gaza who say, I got nothing to lose. Look at my life. I have no prospect. I have nothing. I can't go anywhere. I can't grow. I can't work. I can't do anything. And that to me is a recipe for disaster. And the international community let it happen.
Indeed.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Dr. Roth?
Well, I think the crucial thing is to keep in mind the fundamental humanity and basic human dignity of all of the people who are being adversely affected by this kind of violence. There's no way in which the deaths of some people can somehow be validated by the deaths of others. We really need to understand that this is a terrible human tragedy. It has multiple causes, but that the first and foremost, when you're in a hole, stop digging. Anything that's done to worsen and deepen this crisis is something that's going to be regretted for a very long period of time.
Dr. Roth, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and I hope this situation resolves itself very soon into, at least the ceasefire or something where no civilians on both sides are paying the price.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Imad Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Imad Nakash. See Dr. Imad Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain.
Welcome back, and thank you for being with us. As we started the program, this has been a very a tough 10 days, 11 days in the Middle East with all the war and the casualties on both sides and the innocent people, and we can call them massacres on both sides. And it's really unfortunate. I hope that ends soon. At the same time, as as everybody knows, in this community, we have one of the largest area where we have Arab Americans here. And there has been some fear after what happened in Chicago and some of the reports nationwide about calls of threats and against different communities, specifically Arab Americans and Jewish Americans and other communities as well. And we just wanted to get an idea, what is going on and how can we protect ourselves? What are the signs that we need to be looking for to stay safe? We want to be safe. And with us this morning is our friends from the FBI. Good morning. Thank you so much. Please introduce yourself, and then we can continue with the interview.
Good morning, Khalil. Thanks for having me. I'm Josh Hauxhurst. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the National Security Branch with the Detroit FBI.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your taking the time with us. And again, what kind of a threat are we dealing with? If you're going a quick assessment.
So presently, we don't have any credible intelligence indicating a threat to the Detroit area stemming from the conflict overseas. What we're seeing is most of the conflict and most of the violence are occurring there. However, there's a tremendous amount of rhetoric on social media that is causing a lot of people some concerns, and rightly so. So we're working very closely with our state and local counterparts and the rest of the intelligence community to make sure we're protecting the citizens as best we can.
Absolutely. What are the signs? What should we be looking for, that we can identify as suspicious, a threat, and who can we call?
So what you should be looking for is people that are speaking to rhetoric that speaks of violence or an intent to do others harm. We see a lot of really awful yet lawful content on the media, on social media rather. But what we're looking for is things that escalate to violent rhetoric or threats being emanated via social media or in other spaces. So what we ask people to do is keep an eye out for that and to report it, right? We get a lot of that stuff that happens, but it doesn't get reported to us. And the FBI, contrary to a lot of people's beliefs, we're not online trolling for people that are exercising their lawful First Amendment rights. So when people hear that stuff, they need to report that to us. And they can do that via calling 1-800-CALL-FBI, which is 1-800-225-5324, or they can go online to fbitips.fbi.gov.
Sorry about that. We can't avoid this and the telephones from coming in.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry for the interruption.
No, I said people that pick up on any potentially violent or threatening rhetoric can call the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI, which is 1-800-225-5324, or they can report that online at tips.fbi.gov.
Absolutely. And we want to live our lives normally, but are there certain things we should avoid, gatherings, things like that may not be a good idea at this time?
I would never encourage people to avoid large gatherings. It's certainly refreshing to see people expressing their First Amendment rights in the forms of either protests or vigils. However, we want people to remain vigilant. If they see something that's suspicious or they hear about something that's suspicious, we definitely want them to report that to either their local authorities or the FBI or both.
Absolutely. And what are some of the do's and don'ts? This is an emotional issue, and what are we permitted to do, and what are things we should really avoid and not do?
Well, what we should do is just remain vigilant, right? We need to remain vigilant. But also something I want to encourage everyone to do is to don't be afraid to call the FBI or to call their local authorities. I understand that in the aftermath of the 9/11 incident, there was a lot of mistrust that was built up within the Arab community, and we've made tremendous strides in breaking that down in the years since. But there's still incidences where things don't get reported to us because there's a fear of talking to the FBI. And we'd like to break through that. So if folks in the community feel that they're being threatened or their neighbors are being threatened or community members, we don't want them to be afraid to call us.
Absolutely. And what kind of community engagements are you getting right now during this difficult time?
So we're having regular engagements with our faith-based community. That's ongoing. And just this morning, I sat in on a meeting with the Wayne County Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, where we brought in a number of chiefs from Wayne County just to talk through what this response could look like and how we can better communicate and coordinate in our efforts to keep the community safe. So I can assure you that we're working hand in hand with our state and local counterparts, and we're sharing information as best we can to ensure that we're keeping the public safe.
Absolutely. Are you still participating in I think there's like a bi-monthly, not bi-monthly, like 3 times or 4 times a year meetings with the community?
Absolutely. We do that on multiple different fronts. Bridges may be one that you're referring to.
That's true. That's true.
Outback
Yes.
is another. There's various community engagements that we participate in.
Okay. Any other issues that you think we should know in regard to this, to this issue?
But we just want to offer our sympathy to all those that have been impacted by this in very tragic ways. Our job is, our mission statement is to protect the American people and defend the Constitution. And I can assure you that we can do both of those at the same time.
I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and I appreciate all you do to keep us safe. And again, if you can repeat those numbers so people in the community would know, who to contact. And then I encourage anybody in this community to call, and don't hesitate. These men and women at the FBI, they're there to protect us. They're there to work for our safety. So I urge you to give them a call and let them know, because if it does not get documented, we cannot really do something about it. Documentation is very important, and the best way to do documentation is by alerting our friends in the FBI, and let them know what's going on so they can follow up on it.
Very well said, Khalil. I appreciate that. The numbers again are 1-800-CALL-FBI, which is 1-800-225-5324, or you can report those tips online at tips.fbi.gov.
Yeah. And I want to reiterate this point again, and I participated in some of these meetings, and it's difficult to really make a difference for the community if we don't have people reporting incidents and engaging the different agencies that are working to protect us. So I urge all our listeners to do so if possible.
Absolutely, Khalil. I think it's important for folks to understand that we take our jobs very seriously, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. We protect everyone equally.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Thanks so much, Khalil. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
With more than 30,000 successful in vitro fertilizations, IVF Michigan is now ranked as one of America's best fertility clinics according to Newsweek magazine. IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders in high-quality fertility care. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 9 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. A founding member, American board-certified Dr. Nicholas Shama, is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. He has performed over 20,000 successful IVF cases, and it's helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. When it's time to get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at one of America's best fertility clinics, call IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio toll-free at 855-952-9600. 855-952-9600. ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you. Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most, and make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493.
Welcome back and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hachem with US Arab Radio. As we continue talking about the war in the Middle East, we are joined by Mariam Charara. She's the executive director of the ACRL, that's the American Civil Rights League. And, as you all know, and we don't know exactly how many Arab Americans are trapped in Gaza. And they have been there, and we have been working with the ACRL have been working with a good number of them, trying to facilitate their exit from Gaza through Egypt for a few days now. And good morning, Mariam. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, do we know how many Americans were there?
I think that the State Department has more of a official number regarding, the crisis forms that individuals have been filling out. But, it's been going around based on, speaking to other legislators and other departments and other agencies, about 600 to 800 individuals that are United States citizens are currently trapped in Gaza.
Yeah. And what's the daily thing? I mean, they go to the border and they're told you cannot enter, you cannot enter Egypt. Is that correct?
Yeah, so so far, just from one client, they've already had 4 attempts to head to the border, and it was all a fail. Each time they head there, they get turned back, and they wait 8 hours, 9 hours, and that's not easy waiting there, especially when you have that ounce of hope that the border is going to get open. They get turned back, and the border stays closed, and they return back home thinking that it might be another day. And every time another day comes around, if they get any word that the border might be open, it doesn't. Unfortunately, it's closed.
Do we know why they're not opening the border?
They're back and forth negotiations to get the border open. I guess it's more so negotiations and trying to get humanitarian aid in there first. So, word came out that humanitarian aid is going to come out hopefully soon, and the border may open. But again, we are constantly being, given directions about why the border isn't being open and why and when the border is going to be open. So it's just we're not sure. There's back and forth negotiations to try to get this border open. We're reaching out to the State Department, reaching out to the embassy. We'll get answers that there is no word on evacuation yet. And so we don't have the clear-cut answer.
What kind of help have you gotten from the State Department?
Emails. So it's back and forth emails. And again, it's the same boilerplate responses. Did you fill out the crisis form? And we're just going to have to wait. And it's the same, United States citizens are obviously held liable, being that there was a travel advisory. So it's a constant, we don't have evacuation information yet. Just make sure they fill out the crisis form. So
what's in that form? Basically, contact information, who they are?
Yeah, so it's contact information, who they are, location, the reason for the visit, situation at hand. Are you, with family members? What's the time frame? So it's just a basic form to capture the information of the individual that are United States citizens and trapped in Gaza.
Yeah, it's amazing that our State Department does not offer much help. I tried to call the State Department and a couple of times, and they wouldn't really give me any information or talk to me or anything like that. They did not facilitate any information at all. It's really heartbreaking.
It is, and they'll send you an email, and they'll send you an email address. So you can email this address, and usually it's supposed to be the ambassador, but again, it's the same responses. They'll respond back to flee Gaza if you feel it's safe. No, flee where? Where am I honestly going to flee? The border is closed. Every way we go, there is danger. So we can't do this anymore. This is exhausting. It's mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausting.
Absolutely. Now, the embassy told them that to go from northern Gaza to southern Gaza, and then go to the border, and then they keep going there, and they don't let them in, and they're not getting any help from the embassy.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you give them a little ounce of hope that, okay, we're getting clear direction now, and then they get turned away. And there was one situation, where I have voice messages back and forth with our client, Mr. Zakaria Al-Araishi, where he received notice to head to the border, to head south. And so this was given directions from the IDF, according to what was sent to us. It was head to the south, and so many did do that, and unfortunately some didn't return. They were killed through airstrike on the ground, and some made it back to tell their horrifying story. And the client did not leave at the time. He felt something was off and wrong, and he stayed, and he was correct. Something was definitely wrong.
Yeah. And what's the state of mind of your client and the people that you're talking to over there?
Oh, well, I just got off the phone with him about maybe 20 minutes ago, and he stated that they're both grappling severe mental health issues and PTSD, very traumatic. Every day, he said, and every second, it's not every minute, he said, he specified every second, I feel like we're next, that there's going to be an airstrike and we're gonna die.
Yeah.
And he also has medical conditions too. He has high blood pressure and other medical conditions that he suffers from, and that he needs to see the doctor, him and his wife, Layla. But he's expressed that earlier today. And he's also showed me, look, I can't eat. There's no food. I'm drinking unhealthy water. So their state of mind right now is destroyed.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that we don't get any help from from our government. Was there anybody waiting for them on the other side of the border, or?
I don't know who's waiting, but what who needs to be waiting are people that are going to rescue them and get them to the next step and get them to the next location. It's unfortunate because even when they do tell them that they can surpass the border, you have to find your own transportation to get to the next. So it's difficult. There's always these insane obstacles that you have to surpass.
Yeah.
So
what's really disheartening is that we send cruise ships to pick up Israeli Americans from Israel and take them to Cyprus, and yet we don't make any effort to really help Arab Americans trapped in Gaza. It's really disheartening.
Absolutely. That's definitely overwhelming to know that, we as the United States of America, we have one of the strongest base, we have the strongest Navy force, and we have taken on the most challenging forces, most challenging situations, and went to countries abroad and rescued civilians through air, through water. We've done the unthinkable. This is the time to do the unthinkable. Why are we not using our resources? Why are we not using the connections of our allies? Why are we not coming together as one? This is a time where it sheds light on what unity truly is. And for all these years, building these allies and connects, we should be able to have that crisis support system that the second something like this happens, we lock hands and we help one another.
Exactly. And the selection of services, I remember in 96 when Condoleezza Rice was the Secretary of State, and she refused to evacuate Lebanese Americans out of Lebanon. And then when she decided to do it, she was going to charge them for it. And then later on, they changed their minds. It's like, we don't have enough money to really evacuate our own citizens, something that a pledge that we have on our passport saying that they will do so. It's really, really unfortunate. Who are you working as far as, local officials or American officials on this issue?
First and foremost, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. She's been a huge support system for the Arab American Civil Rights League and the family. I quickly got on the call and reached out to her staff, and she's responded heavy. They've already had connection before we even responded to them, so they were on it. They're constantly keeping us updated when they receive any information after they debrief. Ms. Rashida has also, Congresswoman Rashida has also significantly put in, work to try to keep us updated at all costs. And she's, their department has also worked on doing a ceasefire now, to try to put a stop to this. And they've gotten some good amount of organizations to support nationwide. So again, we're collectively working together. We're all constantly receiving the same boilerplate responses. Unfortunately, even when you reach out to every part of the United States, you'll still get them. And we're also working with Senator Gary Peters' office, and they're working on this case. They've taken the initiative. They're trying to get answers, and we're all kind of working together. But more so, abroad from the congressional and congressional legislative avenues, we're also taking the social media / media avenue, where we're taking this case and many cases abroad, and fortunately we are getting more individuals contacting us of family members that are trapped in Gaza, and that's what we need to do. So whenever we get those calls, we try to connect them with the right people, and we have built a vast connection here, through the White House. So we're trying every avenue that we can, but right now it's about bringing public awareness and working together. This isn't just one person. This isn't just one community. This isn't just one congressional office or state office. This is all of us working together. The more voices, the more people that will intervene.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any final notes?
No, we are working hard on making sure that we do this federal lawsuit. The ACRL, in collaboration with the Anti-American Discrimination Committee, have filed a lawsuit with the plaintiff, obviously, Zakaria and Layla Al-Araishi have filed a federal lawsuit. We're trying to gain that momentum as much as we can, so we can keep this force going, and we can continue to bring awareness publicly and nationally. And I mean, I want to say that I still have hope. I still have hope, and I'm always going to have hope.
We do.
I'm going to have hope.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have hope, and then, we pray to the Lord that this happens quickly, and then, the whole madness there will subside, and things will change. Mariam, I want to thank you so much for being with us, for taking the time. I know you're very busy, but just wanted, to bring light to the issue.
I appreciate you for having me. I do want to end it with, the ACRL created a hotline. It's the urgent call to action for U.S. citizens trapped in Gaza hotline. So anyone that is trapped in Gaza, or you have a loved one that's trapped in Gaza that is a United States citizen, I urge you to call the hotline at 1-888-806-3822. Again, the number is 888-806-3822, EVAC. And you'll get connected with myself, and I'll take your information and hopefully connect you with the right department, and just continue to shed light on this issue.
Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. This is a terrible issue. Not only that we have to deal with the psychological issue of the war, and that it could spiral into, a bigger war, a regional war. It's just now, many of us have to worry about their loved ones being trapped there and unable to leave. Not only unable to leave, is that our government is not doing enough to help. And our government has been selective, and this is really terrible, and in their help. And then we hope that will change, and then they would come in to back home, and we'll see them, and then the violence subsides. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
You.
Yeah, thank you. And then I want to thank our listeners, and I want to thank all our guests today. You have a wonderful weekend, and hopefully next time we talk and we meet, things will change. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.